In 2012, I got hit by a drunk driver, and that car accident turned my life upside down in a matter of minutes. I ended up sustaining what they called a mild TBI, a mild traumatic brain injury, which, if you ask me, is a bit of an oxymoron because there was nothing mild about it. I couldn't handle any sort of input. Even natural light was too much for me. It felt like somebody was shining a flashlight in my eye. I couldn't handle noise. Everything just came in at the same level and just felt like in the intensity that I can't even describe. And I was dealing with severe migraines, dizziness, couldn't sleep, but I was exhausted and really couldn't function. In fact, I lost my job, I lost my ability to work, I ended up having to move back in with my family and just focus on trying to get well. And a year into that, I was told by my neurologist that my body had done all the healing it would do. In fact, he said to me, Danielle, this is just your new normal and you need to shape your life around it. And my anxiety was so bad. I mean, I couldn't even think straight. I would have panic attacks that would literally soak my shirt because I would just start crying uncontrollably and I would go numb because I'd be hyperventilating and just no oxygen was getting into my system. And I would look at myself in the mirror, and the crazy thing was I looked just like this. I looked absolutely fine, except I was literally falling apart on the inside and I couldn't snap myself out of it. It wasn't something that I could just push harder or try harder or do anything differently than what I was doing because the damage was done and there were really no solutions out there. And so I didn't know if I'd ever be able to work again. I didn't know what my future looked like. And honestly, I didn't know if I really wanted to keep living. And it's interesting because a comment made by an Ayurvedic doctor and then a simple suggestion that my mom made started to shift everything. And I want to share that journey with you in hopes that it can perhaps help you on yours and get you out of anxiety, get you out of whatever has knocked you off course in your life. And, I typically kind of buzz through the injury side of things because I don't like to talk about negative things. And I'd rather tell you all the beautiful things I learned on the journey, but just to kind of paint the picture so you have an understanding of how intense it was. I had blackout fabric in my bedroom. I couldn't handle natural light. Sunglasses, hats I had on when I was inside. I had to have a certain filter on any sort of computer screen like that would take, the blue light out. And still, I could spend about 10 minutes trying to concentrate and looking at a screen or something like that. And then I just get completely overwhelmed. I would try to have a conversation with someone, but I would be so overwhelmed by the noise of the air conditioner and them, cutting their food, and to follow a conversation when all of that was also coming in, I would just tell myself, look at their mouth. Whoever's mouth is moving, Danielle, just look at that mouth because that's what you're supposed to be doing. I was not with it. And there was no way I was going to give you a straight answer, a very good answer, if you tried to loop me into that conversation. I couldn't get the words out that I wanted to. Sometimes I could see the word, I know it starts, with G, but I couldn't get the word out. Or I would just have to describe it to you, like that place where you park your car next to the house. Yeah, the garage, and someone would fill in the word for me. But it was I was trying to go to the file cabinet in my mind, and that word wasn't pulling out. And when I would write things, this was infuriating. I would write things and I would write maybe the word choose, but I had intended to write the word change, and spell check wouldn't pick it up because it was an actual word. And so it was just really frustrating. People think, oh, it was just, just an autocorrect, something happened when she was texting. And I'm like, no, I literally read that and my brain read that I wrote the correct word. And even if I would reread, it would still read it as if I wrote the correct word. So it was infuriating, especially having been such a high functioning person. I mean, I graduated top of my class in high school. I graduated with honors from University of Virginia, which is a top public school. And it was just not how I was used to functioning. So I was dealing with also just severe debilitating migraines. I mean, pressure in my head that you could not believe. It felt like somebody had a vice grip on my head, and it would also be pulsating, and it was just exhausting, and I was dizzy all the time. I just wanted to sleep, but my brain wouldn't turn off. So I would just lay in bed and I would just be there with my thoughts, which if you have ever been alone with your thoughts, it can get pretty dark. And I watch a lot of people try and do everything to avoid that, right? They stay busy with life, or they numb out with, TV or social media or drugs or alcohol or whatever. I couldn't do anything because it would hurt. It would make me feel worse. And so I looked fine on the outside, but I will tell you, I was drowning on the inside, and these panic attacks would just absolutely take me over. And I didn't want people to know how bad it was, so I would call different people when I would have the panic attack, different friends, different family members, and so none of them really knew how bad it was, that these breakdowns were happening like daily. So that's where I was. And, my mind would constantly be thinking about my old life, trying to figure out how I could get back to it. I was still in some fantasy thinking I was going to be snowboarding that winter, and my friends that I rented the place with were like, yeah, Danny, I think we're not going to include you on the lease for that. Like, if you can come out, you can come. Like, they could see much more clearly than I could that, like, my life had changed and changed drastically, and I still had not really come to terms with it. I hadn't accepted it, and I was clawing, trying to get back to this life that every time I went for it, it was like just sand slipping through my fingers. It was like it was not coming back, and I would have moments where I'd think about my future, and that was just as dark because I had no idea when I was going to be able to function again. I mean, what work could I actually do if I had a panic attack when I tried to drive and I couldn't concentrate for more than 10 minutes? And it was just like, what's the future going to look like? Meanwhile, I've got friends that were going on to Ivy League schools and getting, MBAs, and some were becoming doctors, and others were getting their doctorates. And it was just like, life was passing me by. I was on the sidelines. And I didn't know who I was anymore. To be honest with you, I had absolutely no idea if I was ever going to be able to be a functional member of society again, and I was completely miserable. And it was around this time that one of my very good friends was living over in India, and she invited me to come. I had known her in college. We were really good friends, and she said, why don't you come hang out with me and my family for 3 weeks? And like, you've got the time, you've got the space, we'll take it easy. You'll be able to rest as much as you need. And so we arranged it so I could go, because I was going nuts. Like, I needed an escape from my own mind. So I went there, and in our time together, she took me to her uncle grandfather, which I'm still trying to figure out what that even means. But he had a place, and this facility had an Ayurvedic doctor on hand. So we go in to this Ayurvedic doctor appointment, and I'm sitting there. My sister had accompanied me as well on the trip. And we're sitting in there, the three of us, and this guy just takes my pulse, right? He's like, his fingers are just reading my pulse. And then all of a sudden he starts saying things like, you get headaches that are due to your environment. These are unusual. The onset of them, it's not normal. It's because of your environment. It's external things causing them. I was like, yeah. And I looked at my friend. I'm like, did you tell them about my accident? She's like, no, nobody here knows that you had a car accident. Like, we've said nothing. And then he said some other things about like random pains I would have in my thighs and my legs. And like, he knew about that. And I'm like, I've never told a soul that used to happen. And anyway, so he goes on, and I'm like, well, you got me. You've nailed me. Whatever you felt, like you got it. So what do I do? And he said, meditate every day for a year. And then he suggested an herb. And I remember leaving there thinking, like, meditation, what is that going to do? Like, I can't just sit there and do nothing or whatever. I totally just disregarded it. But interestingly, when I came home, my mom, she's a yoga teacher, and she owned a yoga studio. She would teach teachers. Okay. So, she had her own program, and she would teach and certify teachers. And, one of the things she taught was Yoga Nidra, a guided meditation. And one evening when I was really frustrated because I couldn't sleep, like exhausted, but brain wouldn't turn off, she said, well, why don't we do Yoga Nidra? Because it follows the brainwave states down into sleep. It takes you from, your bright-eyed, bushy-tailed beta state down to alpha, theta, delta, like the same. It retrains your brain how to sleep. So we did it. And that night, I slept through the whole night. And I was like, Mom, that was amazing. Can you record it? So she recorded it. And then I would kind of like pull it out when I felt a migraine coming on, and I would go and I would listen to it, and I would stop the migraines from getting full blown. And it was interesting because around this same time, Kamini Desai was writing her book on Yoga Nidra. So Kamini created the I Am Yoga Nidra and the integrated Amrit method, and she was writing a book about it, and she needed help citing the research about what the West was saying Yoga Nidra was supporting with the body with. And so My degree was in biology. I knew how to cite research. It was like a year-long project. She said, Danielle, you can do it in 20 minutes a day. I was like, perfect. So it gave me something to do. And I started to read and see what the scientific literature was saying about this practice. And at the same time, right, I was experiencing it. And I was feeling it in my own body. It was really interesting because the research was saying, hey, cortisol levels go down, your stress hormone, and that it was creating new neural connections in the brain and was helping with different things. And like my processing speed was really slow and I was having different issues. And of course I was having the panic attacks. And all of a sudden, as I just kind of continued doing this practice, it was like the panic attacks just sort of stopped. The anxiety kind of stopped. My racing mind just quieted down and I felt this sense of peace. It was like it was this little light inside of me and it just kept growing. And it was just getting a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. And all of a sudden I was realizing that I was okay. Like there was something stronger inside of me, like a peaceful center, a peaceful stillness that I'd never tapped into prior to my accident because I've been so busy, right? I was just doing life and I did it full out. And so there was no time, to listen to some peaceful, like inner center or something, it was just like I was going. And all of a sudden I realized well, first of all, I can lay in a dark room, right? I can do this practice. And I wasn't trying to fix myself and I wasn't trying to heal. I was just showing up. I was just laying down. I was just listening to the guidance because it was so simple and I could just surrender to it. Like it was one of the very few things that I could actually do with a brain injury. And I started to connect into that deeper thing. And I started to realize I don't have to pay attention to my thoughts. Like there's a stillness behind them that I can access. And I had no idea that this is what, the yogis had been teaching for centuries, and why Yoga Nidra was even invented was to allow you to access this space, but it just naturally happened. And I realized the inner choice that I had, which was I can pay attention to my thoughts and think about my past and get depressed, or start trying to think about my future and get all anxious, or I can make the inner choice to just let go of them, to be in the present moment, to not worry about anything, to ask, well, what right now would make me happy? What right now would bring me joy? What right now is what would help my body, feel a little bit better, a little bit more comfortable. And that's just what I started doing. And it was like Yoga Nidra was the key that unlocked this profound truth for me. And interestingly, after the project finished with Kamini, she gifted me a training. She said, I'd love for you to come down and get certified in Yoga Nidra. And at first, I kind of pushed it away thinking, that's like my mom's thing. She teaches yoga. I'm not going to do that. And then I thought, well, there's got to be other TBI survivors out there. There's got to be other people that have had traumatic brain injury that feel like I can't do anything, but they can lay down in a dark room and listen to guidance for sure, and it will help them. So I went to get certified. And I'll tell you what, I had no idea. It was a 10-day training. The first 5 days were really all about you. It was all about understanding the reason that this practice was created. And I remember sitting there, the very first lesson, Kamini said, the yogis spent thousands of years wondering and thinking about this question, that if there were a single truth that if known solves everything, what would that truth be? And that truth was realizing that you were more than your thoughts. And it struck me so hard because I went, yeah, that's the realization I had. And it was the realization that set me free. Made me realize, whoa, there is something inside of me that is steady behind the backdrop of any storm in life. And I can stand on that and I can rely on that. And we went into this training then even deeper into the insights that the yogis had, and this Eastern philosophy has been teaching for thousands of years. And then I learned the power of this practice. And not only did it get certified, I went to advanced certification for children. I now assist Kamini, and I have for, oh my gosh, nearly a decade in training other Yoga Nidra facilitators. I've gone deeper into yoga therapy and these techniques and practices that teach people how to master their inner world, that teach you about this inner choice. And so I am here sharing with you all because I want you to access it. And I believe that there is a simple way to help you deal with your anxiety, to help you deal with the never-ending stream of thoughts and the stress that's being created, right? And if you've gone through a trauma like I had that feels like it's just taken over your life and you don't even recognize yourself, you don't even recognize the life that you're living, healing is possible. And I want you to know the answers aren't out there, it's in here. And there is a grace inside of you that you can connect with, and Yoga Nidra is the key to take you there. right? I can show you the way. You have to walk the path, and you will find it yourself. And so subscribe if you want to go deeper. That is the intent behind this channel. It's a new channel that I am just starting. I want to share more of my story, more of the things that I practice that help me to heal, so they can help you on your journey. And I would love to hear in the comments what your biggest pains are. You know, I know you might feel broken. I know you might be frustrated. You might have tried everything. And let me know where you're struggling, because I've been there. I've walked the path, and I'm happy to create videos and even talk with you privately about supporting you on this journey. All right, and helping you actually return to who you truly are. Because I believe that while it feels like you're breaking, you're actually being broken open. And there is so much that is coming into your life. And a lot of people that go through trauma, they don't see the blessing inside of it, which is that life has led you to a point to break you open and look in a different place for answers. And until you look in that place, it's miserable. But once you learn to look inward, you're going to get all the answers.